Alright, so here we are today, YouTube. We're going to be starting with a SRT suspension install on a 2010 Dodge Police Package Charger. This Charger came with the performance suspension, so it has Nevomat shocks in the rear. So for the rear, we'll just be changing out the coils today to the SRT coils. But up front, we'll be going with Bilsteins and the shorter SRT coils. Alright, so let's begin. It is about 11:30 or so at night, 11:24. For this, just before I do anything, I went ahead and opened the engine compartment here. Here we are. And you're going to look at the top of the strut tower on the passenger side. So there's the motor. So it's just got this cap on it, and you're going to get the screwdriver underneath, if you can see, and it just kind of pops up. So it's pretty easy. It's just a friction fitting. It comes right off, and you can see the 3 bolts that are holding the top of the strut in. Alright, here's another look at the strut. You're going to see you have 3 bolts here, here, and here. Your outer is going to be 3-bolt pattern, and it's going to be pointing towards the outside of the vehicle. So if you can see from where I'm standing, this is the passenger side of the car. Coming back to the strut tower and the engine compartment, your outer bolt or your 3rd bolt is going to be pointing towards it, so it kind of comes in an arrow pattern. Alright, going from there, we now need to jack up the car. So you'll see under the rocker panel on the passenger side, you're going to have a lift mount, or a spot where you can lift your car from. I'm going to bring that under, and that is going to be the frame rail right about there. You can see there's got a hole in it, so that's where you're going to want to put it. I'm using a wood block just so I don't mar up the frame, and putting that on my jack, and that's where we'll be jacking our car up from. Alright, so here we are. We've got the car jacked up and the wheel off. You're going to need a few parts, or a few tools for this installation. One is going to be the 21mm wrench, a box-in wrench, 3/8 or 1/2 inch drive ratchet, and the accompanying sockets, which is going to be an 18mm, a 10mm, and I believe a 13mm. Now, the 13mm is going to be for the top bolts, or at the top of the strut tower. This 10mm socket goes to the control arm bolt that you'll put on there, and at the same time you will use the 21mm wrench here on the control arm bolt to hold the nut in place as you screw that off like so. So, relatively simple installation. One more thing is going to be a pitman puller. That's to get the ball joint on the upper control arm undone. So once you've unbolted it, you'll need to put a pitman puller in there to pull the upper control arm apart. Alright, for this installation, first for removal, you're going to want to remove both the upper control arm bolt, which is here, and it bolts to this tab on the strut. Giving another look here, so here's the strut and the shock, or the coil. And coming around, there is where it bolts to the upper, or the torsion bar, or the sway bar, sorry about that. And then also your lower control arm bolt here, which is just the bracket at the bottom of the strut, and that is a bolt that goes straight through. That should be an 18mm as well. Okay, as you can see, we've pulled the sway bar in link out of the tab off the strut. That required a little bit more force, so I went into a 1/2 inch ratchet. I would have used an air ratchet, but it is late at night. It is now 11:50 or so, and trying to be cognizant of my neighbors. So here we are. The lower control arm bolt was taken out. That was pretty easy. I just used an electric impact, and you'll see there was some tension on there. As soon as the bolt was taken out, the lower control arm pulled up, and that is because the upper control arm here is still bolted in. So next, we're going to loosen up the bolts on the top of the strut tower and the engine compartment, and then we will proceed to pull the upper control arm, or separate it with the pitman puller. Okay, here you can see I've loosened up all the nuts here on the top of the strut tower, and I've removed the bolt off the upper control arm. Alright, that was pretty simple. It was just standard 18mm and a 3/8 drive socket. And now we're begin pulling it with the Pitman puller. So, get down here, take this. Now my Pitman puller, sorry, I was sitting down there. My Pitman puller is a little bit large for this application. You can get smaller ones. These are easily rentable at Advanced Auto or a O'Reilly. I prefer O'Reilly, just seem to know what they're talking about around here, parts-wise and whatnot. And you can rent them and get a full refund back on your deposit. So, alright y'all, sorry about that. Phone died on me. So anyways, little progress update. Not too much happened. You see I got the upper control arm here undone with the Pitman puller. It's pretty simple. It's gonna kind of just jump off on you after a couple turns. Here it was. Just sat on the upper control arm like so, and this is what you're gonna do if you have a larger jaw. You're just gonna sit on it kind of canted, not straight, because it's gonna catch the very edges and you'll strip the metal, but kind of canted like that. Alright, so I pulled that off. As soon as that happened, the whole suspension dropped, and once that did, I was able to finish undoing the nuts on the top of the strut tower, and you should let the suspension down, and with a little bit of wiggling, your shock or your strut and your coil should come right out together as one piece. Now, mine's gonna be a little bit different here. I have a new set, or not a new set, but a used set of SRT coils and struts that are already put together. So I'm not gonna have to put the coil, undo it off of this strut and put a new spring on. It'll be a complete reinstallation. I'll show you that here in a second. So here's my struts and coils. You can see they're already put together. Coil is already on the strut. And so that'll be a direct replacement, and it should slide right in. Same 3-bolt pattern on the top for the strut tower. Same lower bracket. These are Bilsteins with some SRT coils. So here we go. You're going to want to put in the strut or the sway bar link in first, and the lower control or the lower control arm bolt, and then you will bolt it up into the strut tower, and you'll drive it all back together. Alright, here it is. The new strut is in place. It's just kind of sitting there right now, sitting in the bolt holes at the top. I did say earlier that you're going to bolt in the bottom first. I would say probably put in one or actually all of the bolt or nuts at the top, just enough to hold it so it stays aligned in the holes and it doesn't slide out. But other than that, you should be alright. Alright, so here we are, next update. You can see I tightened up the lower control arm bolt. I tightened up the sway bar end link bolt and nut there. The top 3 bolts to the shocks or the strut have been tightened up, and now all that's left is tightening up this upper control arm. That'll be the last thing you do. What I did was, when I just got it finger tight, I had to hold this together with my hand, so you just kind of pull that together so you can get it compressed. One hand, and just put the nut on to get it started, and from there you can tighten it up with your wrench. Alright, here it is, fully completed. Upper control arm bolted back in. Now, one thing that most people don't talk about on this install for the front suspension on these cars, be it the SRT or the RT or whatever, is that as you start to put on this nut to the upper control arm for this ball joint, this is going to start to spin the stud from the ball joint. What I ended up having to do was, I was able to get it started somewhat hand tight, but I had to go to an electric impact, or if you have an air impact, that would probably work better. You're going to get some more torque on it. But anyways, you just had to keep spinning it. Eventually it started to tighten up. It pulled it together. And just to make sure I had this thing fully torqued, I finished it up with a ratchet. I didn't want to fully torque this with the impact just because this is aluminum, this nut right here, and you have to be real careful, especially when using power tools on the aluminum bolts and nuts. So I finished that up with a 6-point socket and a 3/8 ratchet. That's all you need. Tighten right up, and everything's ready to go.